Our next speaker, on campus at the moment, studying psychology and anthropology at Brunel University, Sanum Ghaffour.
Thanks for that charity cheer over there. Thanks guys, you set the platform really high, so it's going to be like the Queen's English.
You're going to struggle now.
Yeah, it's like the Queen's English versus some ghetto kid from Hackney, so thank you very much, I appreciate that. Alright, so I'm going to talk about, my bad. I'm going to talk about phobias first. So when you think of phobias, firstly I think of arachnophobia because I am terrified of spiders. If I see a spider I will actually run away. So it's actually 50% of women are actually scared of spiders and 10% of men. So guys, the 10% of men that are scared of spiders? Yeah, I'm sure, we're trying to be macho now. Right, so there's claustrophobia, there's aerophobia, there's acrophobia. When you think of the definition of phobia, a phobia is an irrational fear of something. That's it, an irrational fear of something. So when you think of Islamophobia, it's a bit deceiving in itself because it's a cooked up term. It never really existed it never really existed until recently. Other terms like that are just made up really is friendly fire. It's friendly fire when you get killed by someone in your own force. There's nothing really friendly about it, so the term itself is quite deceiving. Also, sympathetic detonation. Sympathetic detonation is it's really baffling. It's when you're carrying explosives, someone fires at the explosives, they explode and you die as a result. And that is sympathetic detonation. When you think about it, there's nothing sympathetic about it at all. In the same way, Islamophobia. When they say Islamophobia, firstly, Islam means peace and submission. So you're saying you have an irrational fear of peace. It doesn't really make sense. And when they say Islamophobia, they don't mean they have a fear of Islam. It means they have a hatred of Islam. There's different things. They're just trying to say that it's a phobia when really it's not. Okay, right. So when the after 9/11, the news was literally like this. You'd see someone on the news and they'd say weapons of mass destruction, suicide, Muslims, terrorists, and then they'd battle on about straws or something. Then they'd say Al-Qaeda, jihad, Muslim, Osama bin Laden, terrorists, and then they'd move on to some other segment and they'd say terrorists, homemade bomb, Taliban, terrorists, terrorists, terrorists. So they just kept repeating terrorists, and they constantly spoon-fed us this lie, and it resulted in a war with Iraq. So Alistair Campbell and Major General Michael Lorry, now they've admitted and said it was hyped up, and they've actually used the term it was sexed up. And it took them 8 years to realise this, which is a bit shocking, because even in 2003 I was probably 12 or 13, and even I realised it. I was really smart, they were just really stupid. I think they were really stupid, because it's them too, isn't it? Right, so yeah, it was hyped up to such an extent we actually went into a war. They couldn't even give us the correct version of why they went in there. First they say weapons of mass destruction, then they said it was, they were trying to do a regime change and get rid of Saddam Hussein, then they said it was to stop the threat to the UK, then they said it was to liberate the Iraqi people, so they didn't even know themselves why they were going into Iraq. So I'm not saying that there's no terrorist threats or anything. If we look at the statistics though, it has been hyped up a hell of a lot. Right, you are actually 1,048 times more likely to die in a car accident than you are in a terrorist attack. 115 American people dying daily from car accidents, which is one every 13 minutes. Now you don't see anyone launching a hate campaign against cars now. You don't see the EDL, instead of protesting against mosques, you don't see them protesting outside Vauxhall or Ford or any of the other car centres. It just wouldn't make sense. So Glenn Beck, I love talking about Glenn Beck, he's hilarious. So on his radio show, he said that, what was his tagline? He said, the PC world will tell you 1% of Muslims are terrorists, but I argue with that, and I will say it's closer to 10%. And then Fareed Zakaria went on to, he fired back at these claims, and he said there were 157 billion Muslims, 1.57 billion Muslims in the world. If you get 10% of that, that's 157 million Muslims. That's what Glenn Beck thinks there is in the whole world, 157 million. And when he gets, he's got a show, he has had a show on Fox News, and when he's given a platform to speak to all these American people, they're just immediately brainwashed and get 10% of all Muslims. So in here, I'm guessing like, there's probably 20 of you guys that are, according to Glenn Beck, 20 of you guys that are terrorists, so I'm staying well away from you guys. Yeah, probably am. Right, so I'm going to talk about some case studies now. The first one is my sister. She was sitting on a train once, and she's got this bad, terrible habit. She mucks up her headphones, so only one side of them will work. So instead of buying a new pair, she bought a connector. So she'd get one pair, the left pair, if they work, she'd plug that one in, and then the right pair and plug them into a little connector. And she was on the train once, and she went to change a song, so she pulled it out, so she had her iPod with all these cables, and the guy in front of her looked like he was going to literally brick himself from just seeing all these wires, and other people as well, and just giving like really suspicious looks. But when you think about it, it's just a girl in a scarf who's got, you know, an iPod and with a few cables, but they are so scared because the fact it's been instilled into them that, you know, this person, if they're on a train and you see a Muslim person with all these wires, you just immediately think, oh my God, they're a terrorist and they're going to blow this carriage up. Alright, the next one, more serious one, is Ahmed Sharif. He was a New York cab driver, and Michael Enright, he actually went to his cab and they were talking for a while, and then he asked him, Michael asked Ahmed, are you a Muslim? And he said yes. He said, Assalamu alaikum, this is a checkpoint, and he actually slashed his neck, stabbed him in the face and stabbed him in the arm. He didn't even know him. He didn't even know like, what his beliefs were, whether he practiced or any other things like this. He just, because of the fact he was Muslim, he attacked him. So we have the Queen. The Queen, when she went last week, she went to the horse races, and she was wearing a little scarf around her head. So yeah, there's been loads of cases where girls in schools have had their headscarves pulled off their heads. Now, if you think, if someone had mistaken the Queen for just a normal Muslim person, saw her walking, if they pulled her scarf off, imagine the uproar there would have been from royalists, from patriotic people that would just say, oh no, you can't do that to the Queen. Even David Cameron would write a big statement saying, oh come on, that's completely ridiculous. Just because of the fact that she's royalty and she's the Queen. If someone in school, that happened, no one would bat an eyelid. They'd probably say she deserved it. So it just shows, just because of the fact people are Muslim, they're automatically, what's the word? What am I trying to say? Someone? Criminalised, that's it, you're a genius, thank you for that. Okay, so, right, so, mixed up my notes. Alright, so, in an attempt to try and solve these kind of problems, people resort to joining organisations such as the EDL and the BNP. If you want to tackle things like this, they're not the organisations to go to. Joining the EDL to tackle militant Islam is like joining the Nazi Party to tackle Jewish extremism. It just wouldn't make sense because the Jews are responsible. Bear with me. Nazis are responsible for killing millions of Jews, so you wouldn't go to the EDL party. They say they have a problem with Muslim extremism, but we know it's not just Muslims that are extremists. They say they're against extremism, but they haven't said a word against the Zionist regime. They have the 4th largest military base in the world and commit ethnic cleansing on a daily basis, and they don't even say anything against it. If they really cared about the equality of human life and the sanctity of human life, they'd speak out against it. Where they were actually outside the Israeli embassy last week, but they weren't protesting alongside the protesters, they were protesting against the protesters, and they were proudly waving their Israeli flags. So if they say they're against extremism, it's only Muslim extremism that they care about. Right, so just as Hosni Mubarak didn't represent Islam in the last 30 years, George Bush himself, he didn't represent Christianity when he invaded Iraq in 2003. He said God told me to do it. Now, I don't know what God he's talking about, but it's definitely not the God of Christianity or any other religion. No one would say to you, go into a country, invade them for 8 years and don't get out. Okay, right, so Keith Ellison actually said, targeting all Muslims for the acts of terrorism is like targeting all white people for the deeds of the KKK. If Tommy Robinson actually listened to that, maybe he wouldn't be so misguided and lost, bless him. Right, I'm going to wrap up. So Islamophobia's got a lot to do with ignorance. You had one story where a guy was being interviewed and he said, why you, he was from the EDL, why are you here? And he said, I don't want the Islamic Iraqi law to come into this country. It's like, are you really that stupid? So he doesn't actually understand anything about Sharia law or anything like this. He's just listening to the babblings of people like Glenn Beck, Tommy Robinson, Nick Griffin. So there's also misconception, every crime committed is by Muslims. We had the King's Cross bomb threat just last week, and immediately even I thought, oh bloody Muslims, why can't they just keep their bombs to themselves? Even I thought that myself. But they didn't hype that up, even though it was a bomb threat. If it was Muslims, it would have been on every news channel, it would have been like, Muslim bomb threat in King's Cross, they're coming for us, or stuff like that. So, right. So was it the Muslims that invaded Iraq, Afghanistan, Vietnam, Kosovo? I could go on and name loads of other countries, but you guys get the point. It wasn't the Muslims that did it, even though everybody loves to think it is. So prescription drugs are actually 16,400% more deadly than terrorist attacks. So Tommy Robinson, take that in your pipe and smoke it. I'm going to end from a line from a poem by Sanasino. It's called Mr. BMP. It's brilliant. Check it out on YouTube. And she says, so I'll wear my hijab, I'll risk it, because regardless, I'm more British than your tea and biscuits. Thank you for listening, guys.